I can't imagine a more heinous form of torture than getting a bookworm to choose their favorites amongst their book collection. Hey everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, This Story Ain't Over. Today's video is gonna be a bit of a chill, life updatey, chatty video while I tell you about some books that I want to bring with me when I move out. So this is a bit of a life update, but I'm currently looking into moving out from my family home, which is out in a suburb in the GTA, and I'm planning to move to downtown Toronto. The job I currently work full-time at, which is in product marketing, is located in downtown Toronto, or at least the office is. And so I'm hoping to move closer to my office and just be around more of my friends who live downtown and have more of a vibrant and also a little bit more convenient life living in the city, and also just being closer to things that I want to do, like going to cute cafes and bookstores and just being around friends that I can grab like a drink with or lunch with or dinner with or whatever, and just feel like I am not so isolated as I feel currently. That's kind of the plan and I'm really excited for it. But one of the very scary things about moving out is having to decide what books I'm gonna take with me. As you guys know, I have a huge book collection. You've seen my bookshelves in previous videos before, and I have way too many to count. And a lot of them are books that are from like younger years when I was sort of buying books unhingedly, and also from books that have been sent to me by publishers over the various years of my channel. And so I'm definitely not going to be taking all these with me because, let's be serious, apartments in Toronto are like shoeboxes and I know I'm not going to have a lot of space. And although I still am currently looking for a place, I'm not expecting to have too much space, and so I want to make sure that I'm only bringing the books that I really love, but also ones that I'm really hoping to read very soon. So with that said, of my collection of probably over 1,000 or more books, I'm going to be bringing about 50 books with me. I'm not really sure. We're going to count as we go along, and this isn't even all of the books because there's some that I'm going to be bringing with me that I'm just going to kind of keep secret for now because they'll be involved with other videos that I'm hoping to do once I'm moved out. But this is like the base core group of books I'm going to be bringing. So we'll keep a counter on the screen somewhere during this video and we'll see what we get to. Before I get into my favorites that I'm going to be taking with me when I move out, I did want to talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Ritual. So Ritual is a really awesome brand that creates multivitamins, and this is their essential for women 18+, which I have been taking recently and absolutely adoring. Ritual is great because their multivitamins are created with clean ingredients and with key nutrients, and they believe that everyone should know what's going into their multivitamin. If you've watched my recent Q&A video, then you know I have multiple mental illnesses, which requires a lot of daily maintenance through medication. So every Saturday morning after my week of meds has run out, I actually spend a few minutes refilling my med box, and that includes filling it with some of the multivitamins that I need to take for myself to function. So some of those supplements include vitamin D, vitamin B12, and iron, which all can be found in the essential for women 18+. So instead of having to buy multiple different vitamins in these different bottles, I just get this one Ritual multivitamin bottle, and it gives me 9 different key nutrients in just 2 capsules each day. Beyond just the convenience of having to take one less pill every day when I'm already taking so many, I love that Ritual is delivered straight to my door and I never have to worry about running low, and I am notoriously bad about remembering to pick up more of my vitamins and supplements. Now, I'm someone who generally gets pretty nauseous when I take my medications, but I'm also someone who will completely forget my medications if I don't take it first thing in the morning. So I absolutely love Ritual's delay release capsule design, which allows you to take multivitamin with or without food, and it's designed to release nutrients when it gets to your small intestine so that it absorbs it to its full potential. So I absolutely love a Ritual and the idea of clean ingredients, and also just having the convenience of a daily dose of the nutrients that you need. So if you're interested in checking out Ritual, they were kind enough to set me up with a 30% off discount code for all of you. So if you use the link in my description and the code thisstoryaintover30, you can get 30% off your first month of Ritual. Thank you so much to Ritual for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get back into the books that I'm going to take with me when I move out. Alrighty, so of the books that I'm going to be talking about today, I have split them into different categories. First, I'll talk about my favorites that I know I need to bring with me, and these are the ones that are more recent favorites, books that I want to display in my new place and sort of give a taste to people who come over that this is my book taste. And it's also, I think, a collection of books that speak to my new chapter in life, that speak to me as a person now and what I love and the topics that I'm interested in. And I think they're more reflective of this more adult person that I am. The second category of books is going to be all the classics that I love, that I know I need to bring with me because they are just books that I like looking back on. They are books that have beautiful lines that I just want to reference, and they're books that I wish I would spend more time like reading and like annotating as well. And I'm hoping that when I live alone, I'll get the chance to do that a little bit more and really spend some alone time and just slow down and, you know, pick up a book, curl up and like underline some lines and, you know, put some sticky notes and tabs in my books and just really feel the words on the page. And then the last category of books that I have are the books that I want to read very soon, hopefully before the end of this year, hopefully into the next few months. And I've split them into two categories. So one is a bunch of books by South Asian authors that I really want to get to very soon. They're all books that I have owned for a while now that I've been meaning to get to. And I'm hoping that by bringing them with me to my new place, I'll be able to chip away at them one by one and really get through that list. The last category of books that I want to read are just ones that like I've generally had on my physical TBR for a while, and also ones that are more in the sci-fi fantasy range and that I've just been meaning to get to. So a lot of these are just really fun ones that I think I'm gonna enjoy a lot, and a lot of them are also ones that I think will give me a nice pick-me-up when I'm feeling low, and they'll give me a nice sense of escape. Okay, so I'm not gonna spend too much time on each of these books because then this video will take forever, but we're just gonna jump in. The ultimate book that I know I need to bring with me is of course Kaigi by Vaishnavi Patel. My favorite book ever, and just one that I always talk about, I always love. So I know I need to have like a physical copy to both reference in my videos but also just like show to anyone who comes over, because this is literally my favorite thing. This is a retelling of the epic the Ramayana, and it is a feminist retelling and just really freaking awesome. Has some politics to it, some elements of feminism and just women helping other women. It talks about motherhood, it talks about toxic patriarchy and masculinity, and so many other topics that I think you would love. So if you haven't picked up Kaigi yet, go pick it up. Among my favorites, I also must bring Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is a classic, a booktube favorite. It has blown so many of us away, and me included, and it is a book that I constantly am thinking about, so I know I need to have it on my shelves because one, it's like gorgeous, and two, I just want to be able to talk about it to literally anyone who comes over and just show off the fact that this is like a literary masterpiece, really. This is a alternate history set in the 1800s at the height of British colonialism, and reimagines the way that colonialism could have been perpetuated by a form of translation magic. And it follows our crew of sort of unlikely heroes who find themselves embroiled in a bit of a revolutionary plot while attending school at Oxford. Next up, I know I have to bring one of my recent favorites from this year itself, and that is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I love this book to pieces, and I am constantly thinking about it. Sadie, Sam, and Marks have my entire heart, and I know I'm gonna be finding myself wanting to just like go back and pick up this book and read over some of the beautiful lines. It is about a really tumultuous friendship that takes place over the course of 30 years, like 3 different decades. It is through the age of like the internet and games, and it's about these two characters who are creating games together, and it's about the art of storytelling, and it's honestly just the most beautiful thing in the world, and I just tear up every time I think about it. Speaking of tearing up, the next book I know I have to bring with me is The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. This book I talk about all the time as like the most heartbreaking love story you will ever read, and I stand by that, and I've reread it since the first time I read it, and it still stands the test of time. It is still so freaking incredible, and I just love it so much. It also brings tears to my eyes whenever I think about this one. It's about two characters who meet and sort of fall in love as teens in the 1950s in Tehran, Iran, during a lot of like political upheaval, and they are sort of ripped apart for all of these different reasons, and we see them continue on in their lives throughout many years, and we also meet them many years later as they are trying to meet again, and you're just trying to figure out what happened in between, and it's honestly such a heartbreaking and beautiful story. And I know with this one I am just gonna be thinking about it and wanting to like reread some lines and just like pick it off the shelf and just think about this beautiful story again. So I know I want to keep it with me, and I also just want to recommend it to anyone who comes over. Again, this is like the ultimate goal of this section of books, like just showing them off to people who come over and being like, read my favorite books because you're gonna love them, they're amazing. Now amongst my favorites, these next two are ones that I feel like speak to a little bit of me and my personality. So one is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I love this book. book, and it recently came out, and it's been very popular all over BookTube and just literally everywhere. But this is R.F. Kuang's newest like literary thriller fiction book. And what I love about it is that it's this like really hilarious satire of this pretty awful and annoying white woman character who is an author in this publishing world, and it really delves into the evils of publishing and all the things wrong with it and all of the pettiness of the industry. And as someone who used to work in publishing, I think this speaks to so many of my experiences, while also just being a really hilarious and sort of thrilling book. So I definitely want to be able to like recommend this one to people when they come over, and also just have it as something representative of like a part of my life that has really shaped me as a person. So that's why Yellowface is coming with me. On a similar note, I definitely want to be bringing An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. The reason I want to bring this one with me is because it taps into the idea of like social media stardom and just how that can affect your life as well, and sort of the psychology that comes along with that. And I think the way that Hank Green describes that in this book is just so incredible and fascinating, and just really encompasses the actual feeling of being someone online. And I love that, and I think it speaks to like part of my life as well, you know, being on YouTube. So I love the comfort that I feel when I go back and read passages of this book from the main character's perspective. And yeah, I think something about it just always hits me. Although I didn't love the second book in the series, this first one takes the cake for me. Now, I know I said at the beginning of this video that I wasn't gonna bring any of my old, you know, YA favorites or childhood favorites, but there is one exception that I know I have to bring with me, and that is because this is the book that I most frequently take off of my shelves and just look back on and like to read passages from, because something about it just like grips my heart, and that is The Battle of the Labyrinth by Rick Riordan. This is the fourth book in the Percy Jackson series, and as you guys know, Percy Jackson is like one of my all-time favorite series from when I was a kid. It has shaped so much of how I think about the world and just helped me through so many tough times. And after finding out that I had ADHD this year, like it was so validating to know that that was one of the reasons why I connected so deeply with Percy, because so many of his experiences really mirrored my own. I think I really love this book particularly because, one, it's where the romance between him and Annabeth sort of ramps up, and also because this is the book where it starts to veer a little bit older, and I think there's just some really great moments between the characters as they mature a little bit more, and I honestly just love this one. So I always end up going back to like different parts of it and rereading it. And honestly, now thinking about this, I want to also bring the next book in the series, but I'm gonna refrain from adding too much to the collection. All right, this next book is one that is having me question who I am entirely, because one, I don't really like this author, but two, for some reason this book gets me and the lines in it just hit me like no other. So that book is Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. Some of you have probably seen the whole video I did on Sally Rooney books. I read 3 of her books, 2 of them I absolutely hated, but this was the one that I actually really enjoyed. And every time I think back on it, I'm like, damn, that was actually really freaking good. And even yesterday when I was trying to put together this list of books, I was looking back at lines in this book and was just so impressed by how deeply and fully they encompassed my feelings sometimes. And this character is a very messy, chaotic character who is like going through it in university. She's having this affair with this older man, and she is also just struggling mentally. She's also bisexual, and so many parts of her experience feel similar to how it feels to be inside my brain, I think. And so that's part of the reason why I think I want to bring this one with me, because I find comfort in the lines, but it's also just a really interesting and sort of nuanced portrayal of this really chaotic girl, and I just find it so realistic, and that's why I want to bring it with me. Next up, I have 4 different memoirs that I know I have to bring with me because they encompass parts of who I am. I've connected with them so deeply, and I've read them over the last like year or 2, and I've talked about these so many times, so I'm not going to get into them very deeply. But the first one is, of course, An Unquiet Mind by Kay Redfield Jamison. This talks a lot about bipolar disorder, which is a disorder that I have. The next one is In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. Absolutely love this book. It's a memoir about a abusive same-sex relationship, and also just other aspects of, you know, being queer and the queer experience. And I absolutely love this book so much, and has so many beautiful lines that I cannot forget about. Another memoir that I know I have to bring with me is What My Bones Know by Stephanie Fu, a memoir of healing from complex trauma. This book honestly felt like going to therapy for me because it tapped into so many of the feelings that I have had over the course of, you know, coming into adulthood. And I just want to be able to recommend this book to so many people because because I honestly don't think it's talked about enough how much generational trauma can really affect you as a person and what you are going through and how you react to things as a person in your current moment. And I just wish people talked about that more, and this book really does that, and I know I'm going to be recommending it to so many people. And then the last memoir I know I want to bring with me is Finding Me by Viola Davis. Although I read this one completely on the audiobook because Viola's voice is amazing, I do want to bring the physical book with me because, again, I want to be able to recommend it to people, but also it just has so many incredible and beautiful lines to it that I think I want to go back and like reread this and like annotate this entire book. So I'm hoping I'll have the chance to do that when I am living on my own. Okay, next up we're into the classics that I absolutely love that I know I need to bring with me. So there's quite a few here, and I had a really hard time narrowing this list down, but I think I got it to a reasonable amount. So first up I have Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. As you guys probably know, I'm a huge Jane Austen fan, and this is probably my favorite of her books, as it is for many people. And there are so many lines in this book that I always come back to, and I personally just love the roundabout, complex nature of the sentences in the Regency era. Like, just the way people talked was just so fun and cute and interesting to me, and I just love like reading these books, and Pride and Prejudice like takes the cake for me. Like the fact that someone would unironically say, "You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you." Like, what? Why don't people talk like that anymore? So this is that book that just does that for me, and I love going back to reread parts of it. And I generally tend to reread this book like every couple of years, so I definitely want to do that when I'm living on my own. The next classic is one that I always point to as one of my favorites, and that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. There are so many things going on in this book. It's a bit of a gothic tale, it's a bit of a Bildungsroman, and it follows this like very plain Jane character who is a governess for this strange and mysterious man named Mr. Rochester, and there is a bit of a romance and just so many other things going on. But it's also a book of like self-discovery and coming into your own and, you know, believing in yourself, I think, which I really appreciate. And having gone through my own self-discovery this year, I think this one is really on topic for me. So I'm actually hoping to reread this very soon. I haven't read it in a really long time, so I'm curious to see what I think of it this time around. But regardless, I think it'll also be just fun for the fall and for spooky season as well. All right, next I have a few plays and works from Shakespeare. So I'm a huge Shakespeare fan, and I know I have to bring Hamlet with me because honestly at one point I had the whole to be or not to be speech memorized in high school, and that's just the nerd I was. Really want to have this one with me, and I'm hoping to actually annotate my copy this time around when I do eventually reread it. I also have another one of my favorite Shakespeare plays, which is Measure for Measure. There's so many chaotic things that happen in this play, and it's got so many problematic things to it too, but it's so like hilarious and also fascinating, and I just can't wait to reread it because it had some really great characters. And then I also want to bring the sonnets with me because although I did study Shakespeare in university when I was an English major, I do feel like I didn't spend enough time on the sonnets, and I want to spend some time myself just like reading some of these and, you know, dissecting some of the lines and annotating them. So I personally just love having poetry to just like look through and reference and read at any given time, so I'm hoping that this will do it for me. And then the last classic that I know I have to bring with me is one of my favorite classics ever, which is Antigone. So this is a collection of Greek tragedies, but the specific play that I know I need with me is Antigone by Sophocles. It is such a fascinating play and one that has so many layers to it. And like all Greek tragedies, you know, it has an element of two opposing characters and trying to find a synthesis of what is, you know, correct and what makes sense and what is right. And I absolutely love Antigone because although Antigone, the character, is a very messy and flawed person, I think the play itself just hits at so many interesting topics and themes that I just love reading about. So I know I want to go back and reread it and also just like annotate my copy again and just think back on like some of the things that we discussed when I was in school in university. Alrighty friends, we're at 18 books. We're gonna get into the books that I want to read that I'm gonna be bringing with me. Okay, so for this category of books, I'm not gonna touch on them too much because honestly I haven't read them, so I don't know too much about them, and I kind of want to go into them without knowing too much, but I'll just sort of give you a general sense of why I want to read them and why I'm bringing them with me. So the first three books that I'm going to be bringing with me are all by the same author, and that is Sham Salvatore. today, who is a Sri Lankan Tamil author, and he's got a few works that I've heard amazing things about. So one is Funny Boy, another is Cinnamon Gardens, and then the last one I have is The Hungry Ghost. And all three of these feature Sri Lankan characters, Tamil characters. I'm Sri Lankan Tamil, if you didn't know. And the author himself is also queer, so I love just reading books by South Asian authors who are also queer. Many of you know one of my favorite authors is S.J. Sindhu. She is fantastic and has so many great novels, but I personally heard really amazing things about this author from some of my Sri Lankan Tamil friends. So I'm hoping to finally get into reading his books. I did start Funny Boy a while back and then didn't end up continuing with it at the time, so I'm hoping to get back to it soon. Another book by a Sri Lankan Tamil author that I really want to pick up soon is A Passage North by Anuk Arudpragasam, and this one specifically takes place during the Sri Lankan Civil War. The next book that I have is a bit of a magical realist coming of age story that really taps into the immigrant experience, and that is Gold Diggers by Sanjana Satyan. This one I specifically picked up a while back because I had heard Roshni Chakshi, who is the author of the Gilded Wolves series and Star Touch Queen, one of my favorite authors. She had recommended this on one of her Instagram stories, so I knew I had to pick it up soon. So I'm hoping to get to this sometime in the next few months because I've heard it to be a pretty amazing literary fiction magical realist book. The next couple books I have are by a classic South Asian author, one who many people love, so that is Jhumpa Lahiri, and I'm hoping to pick up Interpreter of Maladies and The Namesake. This one in particular I believe has a movie adaptation as well with Cal Penn in it, which I still haven't seen to this day, but I'm hoping to read the book and then watch the movie because I've heard it's amazing, and both of these I'm just really excited to check out. Both of these I've heard to be just really beautiful in terms of their writing, and they also tap into the immigrant experience, so overall really excited for them. Next I have a book that I've talked about so many times that I still haven't picked up yet, but I'm definitely going to pick up soon, and that is The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. This is a new release that came out, and it's a bit of a literary fiction thriller-ish book, satire I would say, that also has some dark elements to it, and I'm really excited to check it out. It's about a woman who is a self-made widow. One day she woke up and her husband was gone, and everyone thinks that she killed him, and so she starts getting these requests to sort of help murder these other women's husbands and sort of free them from, you know, what is pretty terrible situations. All right, this next book is one that I kind of just found at the bookstore one day, and I was like, oh my god, I need this. So that is Much Ado About Nada by Uzma Jalaluddin. I've heard really great things about this author, and she's actually Canadian, and this book is actually set in Toronto, and given that I'm moving to Toronto, I feel like this is just auspicious and makes sense. But I was really intrigued by this one because it's also a bit of a retelling of Jane Austen's Persuasion, which I didn't know initially, and that is just so exciting because that's actually one of my favorite Jane Austen novels as well, aside from Pride and Prejudice. So just the idea of this being a modern Persuasion sort of retelling, but with Muslim main characters, fantastic. The next book is one that I'm honestly not sure I'm gonna love, but I'm excited to try it out. That is Victory City by Salman Rushdie. I read one of Salman Rushdie's books for a South Asian lit class in university, and that was Midnight's Children. I have a lot of thoughts about that book. It was very dense to get through, but it was very fascinating as well, and I'm expecting nothing less from Victory City, which is Salman Rushdie's newest release. This one in particular fascinated me because it is set in the 14th century southern India, and it takes place over 250 years, and it's sort of written like an ancient epic, which I find really intriguing. The last book is one that I'm so freaking excited to read, and it's been on my list, and I'm just finding the time that's gonna be perfect to read it because it is very similar to some of my favorite books. And that book is A History of Burning by Janika Oza. I've talked about this in a sponsored book rec reel before, so just disclosing that, but I do honestly really want to read this one, and this mention is not sponsored. And this is actually a book that's quite similar to Pachinko by Min Jin Lee, and also Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi, if you've ever read that. I've never read that, but I love Pachinko, and it's basically like a multi-generational story of this family that goes from India to Uganda to Canada, I believe, and I think it's just gonna be a really moving tale of history and family, and I cannot wait to see how this one goes. Okay, I think we're at 29 books, don't quote me on that, but we're on to the last section of books that I'm gonna be bringing with me. We'll see if I hit 50 with this next section, but I think we might be just under that. So I'm pretty proud of myself for cutting my collection down to this small. But this last section of books are just general books that I want to pick up. A lot of these are sci-fi fantasies that I think will be really comforting and sort of escapist for me, but some of them are also just books with some themes that I'm interested to read about. I really should preface at the beginning of this video though that these are just the physical books that I'm going to be bringing with me when I move out. out, but I definitely have a lot more books like on my e-reader and on audiobook that I'm planning to read soon that I will have with me. So this is by no means like an exhaustive list of all the books that I'll technically have with me. All right, so the first of this last section of books is Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. I really love Olivia Blake's books. I specifically have only actually read the Atlas 6, but I love her writing and I love her use of characters. But I've actually heard a lot of great things about this book. It's a bit of a contemporary love story that talks a lot about mental health. So I definitely think it's gonna be something I'll probably enjoy. And I also just personally love sad love stories. So I think it's gonna be really comforting regardless. The next book that I have is a bit of a non-fiction, I would say, and that's My Body by Emily Ratajkowski. And all I know about this author is that she's a bit of a model, a writer. She's like a polymath, like she's done a lot in her life. And this book in particular touches on themes of feminism, power, sexuality, and men's treatment of women, which I think is gonna be really interesting. And I think it's gonna start a lot of conversations in my head about different topics. So I'm excited to see how it goes. All right, next, I know I have to bring with me Queen Charlotte by Shonda Rhimes and Julia Quinn. This is the novelization of the show, which I absolutely love and adore to death. But the reason I want to bring this with me and actually like read the novelization, even though it's like basically, you know, one-to-one to the show, is that, I don't know, something about experiencing a story in like written word format is just a little different. And I'm just so curious to see how that's gonna feel. And I also feel like I just want to annotate like the hell out of this book because I just love Charlotte and George so much in that series, and they mean so much to me, especially because like King George in, you know, history had bipolar disorder, a very different version of it than I do, but still. And I feel like it's just really close to me, and just seeing like the love that blossomed between these characters and the strength that Charlotte had to be with him, so freaking beautiful. Next, I have a book that I will probably pick up during the winter, I feel like, but I want to bring it with me anyway, and that is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I've heard really great things about this one, and I've tried to start it a few times, but I think I've never been in the right headspace for it. But I feel like when I have some moments alone to myself to just like calm down, slow down, and read, this will be a great one. This is about cafe where if you sit in a specific seat, you can be taken back or forward in time, and you can't leave the seat, so you can only interact with people that have been in the coffee shop, but it's still like this fascinating situation where you can like, you know, travel through time through this seat. Alrighty, next up I have a couple sci-fi short story collections that I really want to bring with me. One, because I love this author and I've read one of their like novellas and absolutely fell in love with it. But two, recently, funnily enough, and very out of character for me, I have been really enjoying short story collections. I'm currently in the middle of one, and I recently picked up a different one, all of which I'll talk about in my next wrap-up video, but I've just really been feeling short story collections, so I want to bring some with me. These have been sitting on my shelves for a while, and I can't wait to get to them soon. So the first is Stories of Your Life and Others, and then the other one is Exhalation. So Ted Chiang, who is the author of these books, wrote this story called The Story of Your Life, and it's actually the basis of the movie Arrival, if you've ever seen that. Fantastic movie, and I think it did such a great job of adapting the novella that he wrote. But I'm really curious to just read more of these sci-fi stories that he's written, because I feel like they just push the envelope in such interesting ways and just really push the genre in just an incredible and fascinating way. Like, I was just thinking so much when I was reading that novella, like the possibilities were endless, and it just really spoke to like the human condition in such interesting ways. Next up, I know I need to bring Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I know I'm not bringing any Silvia Moreno Garcia books with me except for this one, and honestly breaks my heart, but I needed to cut down the list of favorites, so they had to go. But I am gonna bring this book because it's the one of her books that I have not read yet, and I've heard so many great things about it, so I know I need to tackle it at some point this fall. This one I don't know too much about, but has more like fantasy and mythological elements to it, which I'm really excited for. Next, I have 3 books by the same author that I've been meaning to read for ages, and I did grab all of her books in physical format like a while back because I thought I was gonna do a video on them, so maybe I'll get to do that at some point this fall. But those books are by Emily St. John Mandel. She's also a Canadian author, which is also why I want to read her books, but her most famous book is Station 11, and then I've also got The Glass Hotel, and then Sea of Tranquility. And from what I've heard, all of these involve some sort of sci-fi fantasy element to them, especially Sea of Tranquility, which is her newest release, I believe, has more of a sci-fi element to it. But I honestly don't know too much about these, but I've heard that they are just really great novels with like this speculative element to them and also a bit of a literary bend. And I think they're gonna just really fit my particular taste when it comes comes to speculative fiction, so I'm excited to see what I think of them. I've recently really been into like short books, and I know I really want to pick up Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. I have read one of their novellas, which is What Moves the Dead. Absolutely fantastic, perfect for spooky season. But this one I have heard is a bit more of a fantasy. It's a very short book. It's like less than 300 pages. So I'm hoping to just like knock through it this fall, and I feel like it'll be a nice escapist read. Alrighty, and then the final two books that I know I want to bring with me when I move out are just two really fun and cute fantasy books that I think will just be super comforting and like perfect pick-me-ups when I'm feeling a little lonely or sad or whatever it is. So the first one is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I've heard so many amazing things about this book. It's basically a low stakes high fantasy. So it's set in this high fantasy world with like these different creatures and, you know, races and all of that. But the content of the story is based off of these like very regular characters who own like a coffee shop, and it's a bit of a romance. And honestly, it just sounds so cute. So can't wait to pick this one up. And then the final book that I have is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. I'm really excited for this one because it just seems like a really adorable sort of romance with a hint of magic, and it's giving me a lot of House on the Cerulean Sea vibes, which is a book I really, really loved. But this one essentially follows this young woman who is a witch, and she has these magical powers. She's been hiding them for most of her life, and she somehow gets this opportunity to start like teaching at this like remote school for witches, and she ends up like falling for like one of the caretakers there or something like that. And I think it's gonna be really freaking cute, so can't wait to pick it up. And with that, those are all of the books that I'm gonna be bringing with me when I move out on my own to the city. I cannot wait for like this new chapter of my life, but also just to read all of these fantastic books. I feel like I've been neglecting a lot of my physical TBRs, so I'm excited to just like have this smaller group of them that I can really tackle and just like knock off one by one. And then as I, you know, read some of these, I'll probably like bring them back home to my parents' house and then take some of my other physical TBR and bring that with me to my place. So it's definitely gonna be like a running cycle of books, but I'm really excited to just like get through them and read some really fun things. As always, I would love to hear from you guys what you thought of any of these books, what you think of my favorites that I'm bringing with me, if you're appalled that I'm not bringing certain books that I have loved and have talked about before, and if you have read any of the books that I have on my TBR and what you thought of them, because I love hearing what you guys have to say about any of the books that I'm planning to pick up, and it really helps me sort of manage my expectations when going into them. So as always, thank you so much for watching. If you want to get regular updates on what I'm doing, maybe the moving process and all of that to come, definitely go check out my Instagram and TikTok in the description down below, and also my threads. I recently got threads, so if you want to follow that, definitely go check that out, and I will see you in my next video. So please remember that this story ain't over. Bye!